Welcome everyone to a very special episode of Litera TV. Just in case you didn't get enough of Emma and I on Friday, we are offering a bonus dose of our dynamic duo on Monday afternoon or morning, depending on where you're located. Glad to hear you're both doing well. I personally am particularly excited about today's episode because we are joined by Craig Budner of K&L Gates. Craig is the firm's global strategic partner. He manages the global recruiting and integration functions for the firm. He also manages the firm's global business development, marketing, and media relation functions. And he serves on the firm's management and advisory committee. So just a few different hats that you wear.
That's right.
In addition to the essential roles that he plays at the firm, Craig is also very accomplished in his practice, having represented numerous companies such as Xerox, Hewlett-Packard, JP Morgan Chase, and even a former Olympic athlete. And he's also received many recognitions for his work, including the Jack Lowe Senior Award for Community Leadership and the Ann Loeb Sikora Humanitarian Award. Craig, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you both. I appreciate that kind introduction.
Of course. So we're really excited to get started and dive into some juicy questions that we have for you, just around law firms today, strategic growth strategies, and also how that's changing given the current climate. So when you and your leadership team think about the future of the firm, how would you describe your growth strategy? You know, what's the way forward in light of some of the near-term headwinds and some of the more fundamental changes that are occurring in the legal industry?
Yeah, it's a great question. Our model is a little different from other global law firms. You probably know the Swiss Brian structure where other firms have kind of grown with affiliates that aren't necessarily fully integrated. We took a different approach, which was to fully integrate on one profit center, one technological platform, conflicts platform, and the like. And what we're hearing from clients is that they appreciate a very collaborative approach to client solutions. So understanding their industry, understanding their business, and figuring out what we have that can help them solve their problems, and in some instances even anticipate those. I mean, the interesting thing about the pandemic, probably different from 2008, is that it is a very legally intensive solution to a crisis. Governments are coming out with regulations, they're coming out with stimuli, and the rules are changing every day. So lawyers really have a seat in the boardrooms right now in plotting strategy. And so our strategy as a law firm is to be well positioned to support those legal decision makers as they are frequently asked to blend legal solutions with business solutions. And our kind of architecture allows us, we think, to do that quite well.
Absolutely, that's really interesting. So, you know, I know that you touched a little bit on how the approach is changing. How is the collaboration with your clients changing if they're taking, you know, more of a seat in the boardrooms? How are they adjusting and, I guess, creating that new type of collaboration?
You know, it's really important, I think, more and more for all lawyers, not just K&L Gates lawyers, to listen to their clients. We think we know how industries are being affected and certain clients are being affected by the pandemic, but we really don't know until we ask, until we engage them in conversations and see what's on their plate. They may have some aspects of their business that have been deemed essential. They may have had some that aren't. They may be anticipating return to work in some jurisdictions that have that option, and in others where they aren't. And how do you blend those teams together? So kind of hearing their nuanced business issues that they're dealing with and kind of supporting them in a practical way is really what we're trying to do right now. So we've been having GC roundtables where we get anywhere from 6 to 10 clients on a video chat like this we have subject matter experts on there, 2 or 3, that can help answer questions. But it's really to let them communicate with each other about how they're dealing with their problems, and clients respond that that's a really useful way to help them right now. You know, so many people are pushing out thought leadership, which is fantastic, but clients just don't have time to process it. So by actually helping them that way, they've seen some value. Another example that we've been doing is we have webinars, but our webinars are not just our lawyers speaking about the legal issues, which are ever changing, and really there aren't any perfect answers to some of these legal questions, but they're bringing in governmental experts in some cases, you know, maybe about the CARES Act in the United States, how to deal with that, maybe how to anticipate the investigations that might come out of people taking loans that shouldn't have been taking loans. So really helping them with some of the regulatory issues that they're facing by getting an external expert and combining that with some of the legal experts.
Craig, you mentioned a couple of things that I was curious about. One is that you sort of want to have a one firm approach and sort of a general client solutions for everyone. But then you also mentioned, like, obviously you do have to be responsive to the client's needs, which might be more governmental or regionally based. How do you balance that sort of demand? How basically do you do your strategy? Is it one global approach, or do you have to be more flexible in the regions? How do you balance that?
Well, some clients are, you know, they're not global. You know, a lot of clients today, they may be affected by global issues, and they appreciate that we have, you know, offices that offer that perspective. But we have to, you know, it's a part of that nuancing, Emma, that you know, I talked about at the beginning, where if you've really got to meet the client where they are and understand, you know, are there issues primarily in Europe or in the UK? Are they in Asia? You know, maybe they're industry specific. And so really the key is to listen first and then provide that collaborative solution, because oftentimes, I don't know, I remember the days when you'd go to a client's office and you would sell them something, and you wouldn't even know if they wanted what you were selling. You would just sell them something. You give them like a brochure. Today, the clients really need us to listen first and give a nuanced strategy second.
Yeah. Craig, do you find that there's been a shift in clients asking more about technology, how the firm leverages it, how they can now use technology as well?
Absolutely. On an efficiency scale, they really want you to be able to use technology to get through documents in an efficient way. You know, gone are the days where you sit in some warehouse, and whether you're a litigator or a due diligence corporate lawyer, and you just run your fingers through a bunch of documents. And we've got a huge e-discovery team. Actually, some of the folks in our Seattle office from our legacy firm, Preston Gates and Ellis, invented the Atenex software system, which was early AI for litigation, and we have e-discovery teams that apply that artificial intelligence to the review of massive quantities of data. Another way, and there are many ways that clients expect us to use technology, is in project management, and we have quite a sophisticated pricing team. Actually, some of the folks, Melissa, you've talked to and dealt with, works on that team to understand not just how to do better predictive pricing using our data and clients' data in terms of, you know, what will things cost, how can we be more precise, but also giving them a transparent view of project management. So where are we in the project? How much have we spent of what we thought the original budget would be? And giving them a daily update almost, or something online that they can look at to see where we're headed on that. So those are two of the tools, but there are many, many tools that clients are asking us to really understand and incorporate into what we do to deliver good service.
Absolutely. I guess, you know, selfishly, what Emma and I would love to understand is, how do you, and I think now, right now things are changing. People are being forced maybe to use technology that they otherwise might not have. Do you see that kind of becoming the new norm and people accepting using technology, or as we start shifting back into whatever the ultimate norm is going to be, the continued resistance a little bit to technology? And how would you recommend we approach that as technology partners of the firm?
Yeah, it's a great question. My sense is that the longer this crisis goes on, the more our habits will shift. So we had one of these roundtables, and we had this terrific panelist who's been on a number of times, general counsel. And he talked about communication strategy, and he talked about the concept of having open office hours on Zoom or WebEx so that people can just come in and communicate. And sometimes it has nothing to do with work. So you think about the concept that technology already existed, we just weren't using it for that purpose. And now I think we're not going to go back. Why would we go back? We have professionals on our business development team alone. We have 90 professionals on 5 continents. So the concept that we wouldn't see each other when we're talking to each other by phone, it almost seems like, what were we thinking? Why weren't we using this technology? So I think that we've got to figure out ways to communicate with our clients and our teams through this technology that we're all becoming accustomed to. And I think it will change. It already has changed how we're going to do business post-pandemic. And I think it's for good. I think it will allow us to keep, we're still going to travel. I travel around the globe, and I have these general counsel roundtables in person, maybe over a lunch or a dinner. And that's still going to happen because people need to see each other. But I suspect what's going to happen is more conversations in between those in-person roundtables where you can be more targeted and listen to your clients and your stakeholders better. So I think technology like this is going to be a lot more of what we lean on to get our information and how we communicate.
Fantastic. And just to shift gears a little bit, because I'd like to talk a little bit about you as well. So I know that you still maintain an active legal practice on top of your leadership function and your administrative functions at the firm and everything else that you're doing. How do you go about balancing your critical obligations at the firm to your own personal clients against kind of the broader responsibility to the overall business?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, I bill fewer hours certainly than I used to before I took on these global roles, mostly because I travel so much, and as a litigator, it's difficult to be available to go to hearings on short notice and take depositions but I'm brought in basically to be a consigliere to clients and support kind of more holistic solutions than I used to be. So that's really how my roles has morphed, and I have a great team around me who actually execute on the day-to-day litigation. So it's too much to do the travel and to be a full-time litigator, but I think it's a nice balance because I think clients appreciate the fact that when they get me, they get somebody who kind of is seeing a global perspective. I've been very fortunate and humbled to see, that every legal system isn't the same, every approach isn't the same. So I think clients do like that I can give them some perspective that they wouldn't have been able to get from me, 5 or 6 years ago.
Do you have a favorite hat, Craig?
Hat, like a ball cap?
More like a roll. Like a roll. Or your hat.
Ball caps too.
Yeah. After the American football NFL draft, I've got my Dallas Cowboys hat that I like. But in all seriousness, I really like both the main hats I wear, because I really enjoy helping lawyers who might want to join us find the right fit for a law firm. I always tell them I'm not here to sell you something. I want to match what you're looking for with something we can authentically provide, and helping them succeed, because it really is synergistic with the business development piece. It's the same concept. You know, we're not perfect for every kind of client and every kind of industry, but matching something a client really needs to something we can authentically provide is really, you know, it's a good why. It's a why that resonates with me and keeps me feeling like I'm doing something meaningful to help people solve their problems. And so I like both of those hats.
We lost Joe. Maybe we've lost her. It's okay. I can use this as a. Oh, hello.
Joanne's top.
I think we had a couple questions. Do you mind just taking them just for 1 sec?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like Joe might be in the middle of a fire alarm.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually quite a nice segue. So talking about trying to find like the clients to match you, but also I know that some things that you do are helping with the recruitment side of things and sort of with graduating law firms, which I think is also sort of like a puzzle piece, finding the right people who want to work for you, who also actually you can fit their needs too. So we were sort of curious to, so for those graduating law students looking to begin their careers, you know, in quite a high growth area, like what are the potential practice sectors that you think are coming to mind that are those high growth areas that they should look out for, and what's driving those future growth areas?
Yeah, Emma, it's a great question. I've got a 25-year-old and a 21-year-old sons who, you know, I think about it from their perspective because things really are changing. I think the key I mean, we can all guess about, you know, where things are headed. And my opinion is probably no better than others. But I think the key is that when young lawyers come out of law school, they need to remember that the law is about half of what they do. A lot of what they do is psychological. You know, how do you cultivate the confidence from your clients and that you can support their business needs, and and what is your command of their industry, their business? It used to be, you know, we could learn the business. They provide us a legal question. It was a little more sterile, and we would provide them an analysis of the law applied to the facts. Now clients really look for lawyers who have a good sense of what their business concerns are. So my advice to young lawyers is to read trade periodicals, understand, you know, the areas that they're interested in, learn as much about those areas. And if they want to be a global lawyer, you know, and have a command of global solutions, read magazines like The Economist that give a perspective that's not just about their country. So that's one suggestion. I think, you know, technology is kind of a catch-all industry, but I think really understanding artificial intelligence and understanding how technology is going to influence not just the delivery of legal services, but the delivery of all services. I mean, kind of to your prior question about how are we going to change through this pandemic? We've kind of gotten a little bit of a crystal ball, haven't we, to see this is a technological shift. There's all this technology. It was already in existence. It just wasn't getting used. So now we see really through this period some interesting insights that we wouldn't have otherwise seen. I'm actually reading. I'm a big Ron Chernow. He's a historian, and he writes fascinating history books, and I'm reading the one about John Rockefeller and you know, the great oil, you know, Standard Oil U.S. industrialist from the 1880s that Teddy Roosevelt famously, you know, the trust busting and all that stuff. And you know, you just realize you live during these incredibly accelerating times. Rockefeller did in the late 1800s in the United States, and we're living through an accelerator. And so how do you think about what you're observing right this minute, and how that's going to affect it? So young lawyers ought to be thinking about this moment in time, and how they're seeing this quick progression of technological acceleration, and really understand the law around that.
That's a really good point. And I talk with this with my friends as well, where you think like we're actually living through like actual history right now. We're really aware of that around us. But so I think you're right. There's so many like extra levels that are being involved with law students or for graduating now. Like before, I remember like 8 years ago, it was more about understanding the client sector and having that business acumen. Now, over the last few years, it's got this extra level technology. But you're right, it's been accelerated by the current situation. So how much do you expect, I guess, it's sort of a bit chicken and an egg. How much would you expect an applicant to already know about technology, and how much do you actually think we can get to that when you're on the job?
What I look to see from new law lawyers is intellectual curiosity. I mean, are they anxious to learn? Because whatever we think is going to happen, it's going to happen a little differently than we think it's going to happen. We've learned that. I mean, we've even learned it through the pandemic. So no, I don't expect them to have already acquired everything they need to know about a certain kind of technology or a certain kind of healthcare issue or whatever. It helps if they've got some background. Why is it that IP litigators frequently have some technical experience? It gives clients confidence that they can speak their language. But look, if they're quick studies and they're intellectually curious, I think it's absolutely fine to come out of law school without this real deep technical experience. Just be game to pick it up.
I love that. So I feel like we're having some fantastic Craig insights for applicants. We've got a bit of a sneaky one. So we've got one. So if you're looking for global law firms, like they're trying to get their competitive advantage, this is going back to the crystal ball you're referring to. I guess Craig, what would you identify as like some universal key strategic risks going forward? And what sort of things could they be thinking about to get that competitive advantage as the leadership at a law firm?
So you're asking what a young lawyer should look at in a law firm that might
potentially. I was actually thinking more. What should the leadership team at a law firm be thinking? What would the Craig's insight for that be?
To attract talent.
Attract talent. What it could be to attract talent, if you think that's the sort of the competitive advantage that they could be taking advantage of now, or is it, as I know technology we've touched upon already, or is it maybe sector growth? What would be your standout competitive advantage?
I think the standout competitive advantage is that they would create, law firm leaders would create an environment where the lawyers would be incented to understand other practices other than their own.
Okay.
So when you walk into a room, as a litigator, I used to be focused on my litigation team, how we would approach a problem and help people get the result they wanted in court. Now, I think we all walk around as an ambassador of our other partners. And so the more incentives law firm leaders can create for their young and senior lawyers to understand other practices, you can actually walk into a client meeting and ask them the question, said more sophisticated, but what keeps you up at night? What are your current problems? What are the things you're trying to take advantage of commercially? And if you know your firm and you're incented to collaborate as one firm, you apply the solution they actually need as opposed to the solution you'd like to sell them. So I think the more law firm leaders can do that through technology, because that facilitates this kind of communication that allows you to learn and authentically talk about things that you don't practice every day, and teach lawyers to, do the thing we weren't taught in law school, which is to talk to people, engage people, be curious. What are you seeing out there? Because those are the bits that you learn that help you put that camera on their forehead, and that helps give them the confidence that maybe you can solve their problems. So I don't know if that was exactly where you were headed, but that's what I think global law firms definitely ought to be doing.
It is, and I actually think it's a really fantastic point, because I think traditionally there is a risk that especially sort of partner-based teams fall into silos, and they work exactly like you said, on the clients that they're familiar with or the matters that they know, and there isn't necessarily that sort of cross teamwork that's happening. So the fact that that's happening now is really fantastic. I'm going to try and squeeze one more in before we go. Is taking that into account, how do you use that mentality yourself to, I guess, leverage your BD, marketing, and media relations teams to sort of progress technology?
So since I took over the BD team a little over a year ago, we basically, I've tried to be, if you follow the metaphor, a snowplow for them to be strategic, right? To get into the client's office. Our clients for the business development team are oftentimes internal clients, right? Because you need to cultivate the confidence of the partners and lawyers that you can help them strategically enter the market. And so we have to have our 90 business development professionals, number one, have the active to whatever it is the lawyer wants those people to do, and then to actually have things to help progress the lawyer and the thinking about how to approach a client conversation. So just as one practical example, during the COVID-19 crisis, we've created an engagement sheet. So we had a task force. The task force said, hey, there's going to be a lot of thought leadership on this. These 5 partners need to see everything. We need to approve everything. And then we're going to put it up on our hub website or our HiQ site, and give our clients access to it. We're going to centralize it into one email so clients don't get spammed with, a bunch of emails a day. And then within that, our team sees, okay, what are the 15 or 20 categories of repeatable thought leadership that clients appear to need? And then the team needs to learn those. They need to understand them. So they create a summary engagement sheet that they use. They pick up the phone, they call their lawyers, they say, hey, I see you, do a lot of work for this client. I wonder if you've had a conversation with them about these issues that may be of use to them. And what we find is when you personalize that connection with the client really, really appreciates it, because they're not having to do the work to sort through these alerts and figure out what they need and what they want. So that's how the business development team is trying to get more and more, and our lawyers are so receptive to this, a seat at the table to really be at the forefront of the strategic conversation with the client.
That's fantastic. It sounds like what you're providing them is then also so much more relevant as well, for that client, rather than just the general sort of mass sending of emails. That sounds great. Okay, I'm aware we've still an extra couple of minutes. Oh, Joe's back. Hey, Joe.
I am. I've been listening. My apocalyptic alarm has stopped going off. Apologies again for that. I guess it goes in the theme of the reality of today.
You gotta stay nimble.
Yeah, exactly. How agile were we? So agile.
But Craig, this has been so insightful and so helpful. I have thought about a million other questions that I know. But I don't want to be too selfish with your time. So thank you so much for joining us. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. You guys are delightful, and happy to do a part 2. I'm not going anywhere, so let me know. But thank you. Those were great questions, and delighted to do this.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Be well. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Stay healthy.
Bye.
Bye.